My stepchildren spent 6 months trying to convince everyone. I was losing my mind so they could put me in a nursing home and take my house. What they didn't know was that their father and I had been planning for this exact scenario for years, and the look on their faces when I pulled out the real will? Priceless. My name is Margaret. I'm 72 years old, and this is the story of how my stepchildren tried to steal everything from me, and how their own father made sure they would never succeed. I met Robert when I was 58. He was 65, recently widowed. With 3 adult children, I was also widowed. My first husband had passed away 5 years earlier. Robert and I met at a grief support group, if you can believe that. We both thought we'd never love again. But life had other plans. We dated for 2 years before we got married. His children, Amanda, 42, Brian, 40, and Christine, 37, seemed supportive at first. They came to our small wedding. They smiled in the photos. They hugged me and called me a blessing for their father. I should have known it was too good to be true. But before we continue, if you've ever dealt with stepchildren who showed their true colors the moment things involved money, comment "I know this pain" below. And if this is your first time on Women Confessions, please subscribe because you're going to want to hear how this ends. Trust me. Now, let me tell you when everything changed. Robert and I had 12 beautiful years together. We traveled, we gardened, we spent quiet evenings reading side by side in our living room. We hosted holiday dinners where his children and their families would come over. I never tried to be their mother. Their mother had passed away, and I respected that. I was simply their father's wife, and I treated them with kindness and respect. Robert had worked his entire life as an engineer. He owned his home outright, a beautiful 3-bedroom, house with a large backyard in a good neighborhood. He had a solid pension, savings, investments. He was comfortable. I had my own income too. My late husband had left me with a modest life insurance policy and a small pension. I wasn't wealthy, but I wasn't destitute either. When Robert and I married, we were both careful about finances. We kept some things separate, some things joint. We both had our own retirement accounts. But the house Robert had bought 40 years ago, where he'd raised his children, that remained in his name. When I'm gone, Robert told me one evening about a year into our marriage, I want you to be taken care of. This is your home now too, Robert. Your children, I started. My children are all doing well, he said firmly, and they have their own homes, their own careers. You gave up your apartment to move in here. This is your home. I'm going to make sure you're protected. I didn't think much of it at the time. Robert was healthy. We both figured we had years ahead of us. Then 2 years ago, Robert had a stroke. It happened on a Tuesday morning. We were having breakfast. Robert was telling me about an article he'd read. And suddenly his words became slurred. His face drooped on one side. I called 911 immediately. Robert survived, but the stroke left him weakened. His speech was affected. He needed physical therapy. He could still walk, but with a cane. His mind was still sharp. That was the important thing. But his body had been damaged. The doctor said he could recover more with time and therapy. He just needed patience and support. I became his full-time caregiver. I helped him with his exercises. I drove him to his appointments. I modified our home to make it easier for him. Grab bars in the bathroom, a ramp for the front steps. His children visited, but not often. Amanda came once a month, usually on Sundays. Brian called occasionally. Christine texted. They're busy, Robert would say, though I could see the hurt in his eyes. They have their own lives. I never complained. I loved Robert. Taking care of him wasn't a burden. It was what you do for someone you love. Then, 6 months ago, Robert passed away in his sleep. The doctors said it was another stroke, a massive one. He didn't suffer. He simply went to sleep and never woke up. I was devastated. We'd had 12 years together. Not nearly enough. I'd lost 2 husbands now, and the grief was crushing. But I had to be strong. There were arrangements to make, a funeral to plan. That's when his children showed their true colors. At the funeral, Amanda, Brian, and Christine sat in the front row with their families. I sat beside them. During the reception at our house afterward, I overheard Amanda talking to her siblings in the kitchen. I was in the hallway, and they didn't know I could hear them. We need to talk about the house, Amanda said. Mom, it's Dad's funeral, her daughter said. Can't this wait? No, it can't, Amanda snapped. Margaret's living in our father's house. We need to figure out what happens now. Dad's will should handle that, Brian said. I hope so, Christine added. But you know Dad. He was probably too soft on her. We need to make sure we're protected. This house is worth at least $600,000. My blood went cold. They weren't mourning their father. They were calculating their inheritance. I stayed quiet. I walked back into the living room. I smiled and thanked guests for coming. I hugged Robert's friends and listened to their stories about him. But inside, I was preparing myself for what was coming. 2 weeks after the funeral, Robert's lawyer called us all in for the reading of the will. I sat in the lawyer's office with Amanda, Brian, and Christine. They were dressed professionally, notepads ready. They looked like they were attending a business meeting, not their father's will reading. The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, was a kind man in his 60s. He'd been Robert's lawyer for 20 years. Before we begin, Mr. Patterson said, looking at Amanda, Brian, and Christine, I want you to know that your father updated his will 3 years ago. He was of completely sound mind, and I can assure you that everything was done legally and properly. Amanda's jaw tightened. Why would he need to update it? You'll understand in a moment, Mr. Patterson said. He began reading. Robert's will was detailed. He left small amounts to each of his children, $25,000 each. Sentimental items were distributed. His watch to Brian, his coin collection to Amanda, his fishing gear to Christine. Then came the house. The property located at 847 Maple Street, along with all furnishings and belongings therein, I leave entirely to my beloved wife, Margaret Ann Thompson, to live in for the remainder of her life. Upon her passing, the property will be sold and the proceeds divided equally among my children. The room went silent. Amanda's face turned red. What? Your father wanted to ensure Margaret had a home for life, Mr. Patterson said calmly. That house is worth over $500,000, Brian said, his voice rising. And we get $25,000 each while she gets everything? The house will eventually go to you, Mr. Patterson explained. When Margaret passes, she could live another 20 years, Christine shouted. That's our inheritance. I sat quietly, hands folded in my lap, saying nothing. Your father made his wishes very clear, Mr. Patterson said. This is a legally binding will. Margaret has a life estate in the property. She cannot be removed. Amanda stood up, grabbing her purse. This isn't over. We'll contest this. You can try, Mr. Patterson said evenly. But I can tell you right now, you won't win. Your father was completely competent when he signed this. I have medical documentation to prove it. He knew exactly what he was doing. The three of them stormed out. I stayed behind. Thank you, Mr. Patterson, I said quietly. He smiled sadly. Robert knew this might happen. That's why he was so careful. He loved his children, Margaret, but he loved you too, and he wanted you protected. I nodded, tears in my eyes. But I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. For the first month after the will reading, I didn't hear from Amanda, Brian, or Christine. I thought maybe they'd accepted it. Maybe they'd realized their father had the right to leave his property however he wanted. I was wrong. It started small, Amanda called one evening. Margaret, we need to talk about the house. What about it? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. It's too big for you. You're alone now. You're 72 years old. Don't you think it would be easier to move somewhere smaller? Maybe a nice assisted living facility? My stomach dropped. I don't need assisted living, Amanda. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. But the house is so much work, she pressed. The yard, the maintenance? What if something happens to you? What if you fall and no one's there? I have neighbors. I have friends. I'm fine. We're just worried about you, she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. I knew what this was really about. If I moved out, they could sell the house immediately instead of waiting for me to die. I appreciate your concern, I said firmly. But this is my home now. I'm staying. She hung up shortly after that. The phone calls continued over the next few weeks. Brian called to suggest I might be forgetting things and should see a doctor about my memory. Christine stopped by unannounced to check on me and made comments about how the house was looking a bit messy and maybe I was having trouble keeping up with things. I saw exactly what they were doing. They were building a case that I was incompetent, that I couldn't take care of myself, that I needed to be in a nursing home. Then 2 months after Robert's death, Amanda showed up with a folder full of brochures. Margaret, I've been doing research, she said, spreading glossy pamphlets across my kitchen table. These are some wonderful assisted living communities nearby. Some of them even have memory care units, just in case. Just in case what? I asked, my voice sharp. Well, as we age, sometimes our minds aren't as sharp as they used to be. Dad had his stroke, and sometimes these things run in families. I'm not related to your father by blood, Amanda. And there's nothing wrong with my mind. Of course not, she said quickly. I'm just saying, wouldn't it be nice to have people around? Activities? You're so isolated here. I like my home, I said firmly. I'm not going anywhere. Her expression hardened. You're being selfish, Margaret. This house should be ours. Dad worked his whole life for it. You were only married to him for 12 years. And he chose to leave it to me, I said quietly. Your father made that decision, Amanda, not me. She grabbed her brochures and left, slamming the door behind her. That's when I knew I had to take action. I called Mr. Patterson the next day. They're trying to get me declared incompetent, I told him. They want to put me in a nursing home so they can get the house. I was afraid of this, he said with a sigh. Margaret, Robert prepared for this possibility. There's something you need to know, something he didn't want revealed unless it became absolutely necessary. What is it? Can you come to my office tomorrow morning? There's a second document you need to see. Something Robert kept sealed until after his death. To be opened only if his children contested the will or tried to remove you from the house. My heart pounded. What kind of document? A letter, he said, and some financial records. Robert wanted you to have ammunition if they came after you. And Margaret? It's damning. The next morning, I sat in Mr. Patterson's office as he opened a sealed envelope that had been in his safe for 3 years. Inside was a letter in Robert's handwriting addressed to his children, and attached to it were bank statements, canceled checks, and receipts. As I read through everything, my hands began to shake. Robert had documented everything. Every time his children had asked him for money over the years. Every loan that was never repaid. Every emergency that turned out to be a vacation or a new car or a down payment on a boat. Amanda, $127,000 over 15 years. Brian, $89,000 over 12 years. Christine, $134,000 over 18 years. A total of $350,000 that Robert had given his children over the years, money they'd promised to pay back but never did. And the letter. The letter was devastating. Robert wrote, "To my children, if you are reading this, it means you have contested my will or attempted to remove Margaret from her home. I am deeply disappointed. I gave each of you substantial financial help throughout your adult lives. I never asked for repayment, though you promised it many times. I helped you buy homes, cars, and pay off debts. I gave you money for your children's education, for your vacations, for your emergencies, real and fabricated. I do not regret helping you. You are my children, and I loved you. But Margaret never asked me for a cent. She brought her own income, her own savings, her own independence to our marriage. She took care of me when I was ill without complaint. She gave me 12 years of love, companionship, and dignity. The house is hers because she earned it through love, not because she demanded it through obligation. If you are fighting her now, you are proving exactly why I made this decision. With love and disappointment, your father." I sat in Mr. Patterson's office, tears streaming down my face. "He knew," I whispered. "He knew they would do this." "He knew his children," Mr. Patterson said sadly. "And he wanted to protect you from them." Armed with Robert's letter and financial records, I decided to wait. I wanted to see just how far Amanda, Brian, and Christine would go. I didn't have to wait long. 3 weeks later, I received a certified letter. Amanda, Brian, and Christine had petitioned the court to have me declared mentally incompetent and to appoint Amanda as my legal guardian. Their petition claimed I was showing signs of dementia, unable to care for myself, living in unsafe and unsanitary conditions, and making irrational financial decisions. All lies. But they'd found a doctor, someone who'd never even examined me, to sign a statement saying I should be evaluated for cognitive decline. The hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. I called Mr. Patterson immediately. "This is it," I said. "They're trying to take everything." "Then it's time to use Robert's letter," he said. "And Margaret? We're going to destroy them in court." Over the next 6 weeks, Mr. Patterson and I prepared our defense. First, I went to my own doctor, a physician. I'd been seeing for 5 years and had a complete cognitive evaluation. I passed with flying colors. My doctor wrote a detailed report stating I was mentally sharp, physically capable, and perfectly able to care for myself and my home. Second, we gathered evidence of my daily life. I had neighbors write statements about how I maintained my home, did my own shopping, drove myself to appointments, and volunteered at the local library twice a week. Third, we prepared Robert's letter and financial records, along with Mr. Patterson's testimony about Robert's mental state when he made the will. And fourth, this was my idea, I hired a private investigator. If Amanda, Brian, and Christine were willing to lie about my mental state, I wanted to know what else they were lying about. What the investigator found shocked even me. Amanda had recently purchased a vacation home in Florida. Price, $485,000. Brian had just bought a boat, a big one. Cost, $67,000. Christine had taken her family on a luxury European vacation. 3 weeks, first class everything. Estimated cost, $45,000. None of them were struggling financially. None of them needed their inheritance immediately. They were simply greedy. The day of the hearing arrived. I walked into the courtroom with Mr. Patterson at my side. I wore a simple navy dress, sensible shoes, and my hair neatly styled. I wanted the judge to see a competent, dignified woman, not the confused. Declining old lady Amanda's lawyer would try to paint. Amanda, Brian, and Christine sat on the other side with their lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. The judge, a woman in her 50s named Judge Williams, looked over the petition with a frown. "This is a guardianship petition," she said. "Very serious. Let's hear from the petitioners first." Amanda's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, we're here today because the respondent, Margaret Thompson, is 72 years old and living alone in a large house following the recent death of her husband. We have concerns about her ability to care for herself and make sound decisions." "What evidence do you have of incompetence?" Judge Williams asked. "We have statements from family, members who've observed concerning behavior, forgetfulness, confusion, poor housekeeping, social isolation." "Family members meaning the petitioners themselves?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Anyone else?" The lawyer hesitated. "Not at this time." Judge Williams looked unimpressed. "What about medical evidence?" "We have a doctor's recommendation that Mrs. Thompson be evaluated." "Has this doctor examined Mrs. Thompson?" Another hesitation. "Not directly, but based on the family's reports, So no," Judge Williams said flatly. "Continue." Amanda took the stand. She testified about how worried she was about me, how I'd seemed confused on the phone, how the house was too much for me. Brian testified next, saying similar things. He claimed I'd forgotten his birthday. I hadn't. He'd forgotten his own father's birthday the year before he died. Christine testified that I seemed withdrawn and not like myself. When they were done, Judge Williams turned to Mr. Patterson. "Counselor, your response?" Mr. Patterson stood, and I could see the determination in his eyes. "Your Honor, this petition is not about concern for Mrs. Thompson's welfare. It's about money, specifically about a house worth over $600,000, that these 3 adults believe should be theirs right now, rather than waiting for Mrs. Thompson's natural passing, as their father's will stipulates." He presented my doctor's cognitive evaluation. Perfect scores. He presented statements from my neighbors, my friends, my volunteer coordinator at the library, all testifying that I was sharp, active, and completely independent. He presented photographs of my home, showing it was clean, well-maintained, and safe. Then he dropped the bomb. "Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence a letter written by the deceased, Robert Thompson, 3 years ago. He anticipated this exact situation and wanted his wishes made clear. He handed copies to the judge and to the other lawyer. The courtroom was silent as Judge Williams read Robert's letter. I watched Amanda's face turn pale as she realized what it was. When the judge finished reading, she looked at Amanda, Brian, and Christine with barely concealed disgust. "Let me make sure I understand," Judge Williams said. "Your father gave each of you over $100,000 during his lifetime. Money you never repaid, and now you're trying to remove his widow from her home because you want your inheritance faster? Your Honor, that's not—" Amanda's lawyer started. "I'm not finished," Judge Williams said sharply. "Mr. Patterson, do you have anything else?" "Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence of the petitioner's current financial status." He presented the investigator's findings. The vacation home, the boat, the European trip. Judge Williams looked like she wanted to throw something. Judge Williams didn't even take a recess to deliberate. "This petition is denied," she said firmly. Mrs. Thompson has presented overwhelming evidence that she is mentally competent and physically capable. The petitioners have presented nothing but hearsay and unsupported claims. Amanda started to protest, but the judge held up her hand. Furthermore, I'm appalled by what I've seen here today. Your father left you each $25,000 and a life estate for his widow. That was his right. Instead of honoring his wishes, you've attempted to abuse the legal system to disinherit her. She looked directly at Amanda, Brian, and Christine. If you ever bring another frivolous petition regarding Mrs. Thompson, I will personally ensure you pay her legal fees. Do I make myself clear? Yes, Your Honor, they mumbled. Mrs. Thompson, the house is yours. You are free to live there in peace for as long as you wish. This court apologizes for putting you through this ordeal. I felt tears running down my face, but I held my head high. Thank you, Your Honor. As we left the courtroom, Amanda tried to approach me. Margaret, we were just worried about you. I stopped and turned to face all three of them. Your father knew exactly who you were, I said quietly. That's why he protected me from you. And now I know too. We're family, Christine said weakly. No, I said firmly. Family doesn't try to steal from each other. Family doesn't lie in court. Family doesn't try to have someone declared incompetent so they can take their home. I looked at each of them in turn. Your father loved you despite your flaws. But I don't have to. I'm 72 years old. And I will spend however many years I have left in my home, in peace, without you. Brian's face reddened. When you die, we're selling that house the same day. I smiled. Then I guess I'd better live a very long time. Mr. Patterson touched my arm gently. Let's go, Margaret. We walked out of the courthouse into the bright sunlight. I had won. That was 6 months ago. I'm still living in my house at 847 Maple Street. I'm still volunteering at the library twice a week. I'm still driving, cooking, gardening, and living my life exactly as I want to. Amanda, Brian, and Christine haven't contacted me since the hearing. I heard through mutual friends that they're not speaking to each other anymore. Apparently, they're blaming each other for the failed court case and the legal fees they had to pay. I don't feel sorry for them. But here's what I haven't told anyone until now. Here's the part of the story that even Mr. Patterson doesn't know. 2 months after the hearing, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Christine. My first instinct was to throw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter said, Dear Margaret, I know I have no right to contact you after everything we put you through. I know you probably hate me, and you have every reason to. I want you to know that trying to take your home was the worst thing I've ever done. I don't have an excuse. I was greedy. I was jealous that Dad loved you. I was angry that he left you the house. But mostly I was ashamed. Ashamed that I took so much money from him over the years and never paid it back. Ashamed that I wasn't there for him when he was sick. Ashamed that I let my siblings convince me that you didn't deserve what Dad wanted you to have. I can't undo what we did. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, genuinely sorry. You don't have to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that at least one of us realizes how wrong we were. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're happy in the house. And I hope that when you think of Dad, you remember the good times, not the nightmare we put you through afterward. Sincerely, Christine. I read that letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and didn't respond. For weeks I thought about it. Was she sincere? Or was this another manipulation? Then one day I saw her at the grocery store. She saw me too. She looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. I walked up to her. Christine, I said. Margaret, I'm sorry, I'll go, she stammered. I got your letter, I said. She nodded, eyes filling with tears. I meant every word. I looked at her for a long moment. She looked exhausted. Older than her 37 years. Guilty. Your father loved you very much, I said quietly. He was disappointed in the choices you made, but he never stopped loving you. And he would want you to learn from this and be better. I'm trying, she whispered. I nodded. That's all anyone can do. I didn't hug her. I didn't say we were family. But I didn't walk away angry either. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone. It's watching them destroy themselves with guilt. And then choosing to be the bigger person anyway. But here's the secret I've kept from everyone. Here's what Robert told me before he died, in those final months after his stroke. One night, about a year before he passed, Robert and I were sitting on the porch watching the sunset. He'd had a particularly good day. His speech was clear. He'd walked without his cane for a few minutes. Margaret, he said, taking my hand, I need to tell you something about the will. Robert, we don't need to talk about that. Yes, we do, he insisted. I need you to know the whole truth. He told me that when he'd first married me, he'd planned to leave the house to his children, with a provision that I could live there for 5 years after his death. But then I saw how they treated you, he said. How they smiled to your face but talked behind your back. How they asked me for money constantly but never visited just to spend time with me. How they were counting their inheritance while I was still alive. He squeezed my hand. So I changed it. I gave you the life estate. But Margaret, there's more. He told me about a second provision in the will, one that Mr. Patterson had been instructed not to reveal unless absolutely necessary. If Amanda, Brian, or Christine ever tried to have me removed from the house through legal action, they would forfeit their inheritance entirely. The house wouldn't go to them when I died. It would be sold, and all proceeds would go to charity. You mean, if they ever came after you, they'd get nothing, Robert said firmly. I set it up as a test. If they honored my wishes and treated you with respect, they'd eventually inherit. But if they tried to hurt you, they'd lose everything. Robert, that's exactly what they deserve if they can't even respect their father's last wishes, he finished. When Amanda, Brian, and Christine took me to court, they triggered that provision. Mr. Patterson told me about it the day after the hearing. They forfeit everything, Margaret, he said. When you pass away, the house will be sold and the entire amount will go to the charity Robert designated the hospice care facility that took care of his first wife. They don't know? I asked. Not yet. I'm not required to tell them until after your passing. I thought about it for a long time. Amanda and Brian, they would get exactly what they deserved. Nothing. But Christine? She'd apologized. She'd shown genuine remorse. Mr. Patterson, I said, is there any way to reverse the forfeiture? For one of them? He looked surprised. Technically, yes. The will gives you the power to reinstate any of them if you feel they've shown genuine change of heart. Robert trusted your judgment. I want to reinstate Christine, I said. Only Christine. When I die, she'll receive her third of the house's value. But Amanda and Brian, their portions go to charity. Mr. Patterson smiled. Robert would have approved of that decision. He always said you were the wisest person he knew. So here I am, 6 months after the court hearing, living peacefully in my home. Amanda and Brian have no idea they've already lost their inheritance. Christine has no idea I've forgiven her. And I'm in no hurry for any of them to find out. I'm 72 years old. I might live another 5 years. I might live another 20. Who knows? But every morning I wake up in this house that Robert wanted me to have. I make my coffee, I tend my garden, I volunteer at the library, I have lunch with friends, and I think about Robert and how he loved me enough to protect me even after his death. If you're a step-parent dealing with adult stepchildren who see you as an obstacle to their inheritance, please hear this. You don't have to accept being treated as disposable. You don't have to let anyone convince you that you don't deserve the life your spouse wanted you to have. And you don't have to feel guilty for accepting what was freely given to you. Robert earned that house over 40 years. It was his to leave to whomever he chose. And he chose me. Not because I asked for it, not because I manipulated him, but because I loved him, cared for him, and made his final years happy. That's worth more than any inheritance. If you've ever been made to feel like you didn't deserve what someone left you, comment, I deserved it. If you've had family members try to take from you what was rightfully yours, comment, they tried. And if you believe that older women deserve respect, security, and peace in their final years, comment, amen to that. Share this story with anyone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the best revenge is simply outliving the people who tried to bury you. My name is Margaret. I'm 72 years old. I'm living in my house on my terms for as long as I damn well please. And there's not a thing Amanda and Brian can do about it. Thank you for listening to my confession.